I thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to speak on this forum. And I also thank all those who are present here to hear this talk. I want to express my gratitude to my parents and to my spiritual master. My parents for teaching me what parenting is, and my spiritual master who always stresses on the importance of parenting and always mentions that it is the most important service that a grahastha performs because it is carrying on the legacy. So also I would like to say something that every time I conduct this type of seminar, it helps me as much as it helps all of you. So I'm grateful for that too. So we start now. Yeah, I would like to start by narrating a small story which Radha Gopinath Prabhu always used to mention when they used to have the LNHO annual day. So there was a bird which ate a fruit, and it later on in its droppings, it dropped a seed, and a plant grew from that seed. That sapling grew into a plant, and then it was going to become a small tree. And soon squirrels came and started running over it. Goats came near it to eat the leaves. And at that time, there was a tree next to that plant. And on that tree, there was the wise old owl. And that owl, he said to the goats, "Don't eat the leaves of this plant for now. Let it be. Let it be for now. Don't touch it." When the squirrels came, he said, don't climb on this plant right now. Let it be for now. And soon that plant grew into a huge tree. And once it grew into a huge tree, it became a home for so many squirrels. So many goats would come and eat its leaves. So many woodcutters, so many woodcutters would cut wood from that tree. That tree would provide shade and shelter and fruits for everyone. So when you take care of one child, if you are giving enough love, affection, values, and guidance and support to one child, you are indirectly helping so many others, because because that child will go on to give shelter to so many others. And we see this in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada has explained in his autobiography that his parents were very loving, kind, and supportive. Whatever he wanted to do, they would always support him and encourage him. And he also mentioned, after he went to the United States, he mentioned that whatever I am doing here is all that I have done in my childhood. Therefore, parenting is a very, very important service. So, I want to start with the actual lecture now. So, uh, our topic for today is circle of security, and it is also called the emotional connect. Yeah. So before I start, I would like to mention circle of security is also a group. It's made by a group of people whose names I have acknowledged here because this is a name given by them. So Robert Marvin, Glenn Cooper, Kent Hoffman, Bert Power, whatever. And they also, I think they run an institute where they do counseling for people who have problems, relationship problems or parenting problems. This is in the United States. So what do we mean by circle of security? If you see the picture which comes on the screen, you will see a pair of hands on the left hand side. Now, if you see the upper part of that oval, it is called the secure base, and you see a child running. That child is saying, I need you to support my exploration. Then that child is running and trying to climb over something. Basically, engaging in some sort of adventure or something new. And the child says, watch over me, delight in me, help me, enjoy with me. So, what does this mean? We will discuss. Afterwards, that child is again coming back and saying, I need you to welcome me. And then, safe haven, I need you to protect me, comfort me, delight in me, and organize my feelings. If we notice that when a child is born, it wants to be with the mother all the time, cling to the mother, does not leave the mother at all, does not want to leave the mother at all. But as the child starts growing, the child starts exploring. As it is crawling, it crawls a little away from the mother, but then it turns and it looks behind just to check, is my mother still there? Then it goes a little more ahead, and again it turns behind and checks, is my mother there? As it grows older, it starts walking, and as it walks ahead, it turns and looks, is my mother there? Or whoever is the caretaker, my father or my grandparent, whoever is the caregiver at that point in time, are they there for me? Then the child starts running. You take the child to a garden, the child runs all. And then the mother calls out to the child, and the child comes back. The child runs, but as it runs, it turns behind again to see, is my mother still there? So this is called the circle of security. What does it mean? The child wants to leave the mother and go away to explore, to find his needs. At the same time, the child wants to be sure that my mother is there for me when I need to come back and get comforted, when I need protection, when I'm lost, when I'm confused. I need to come back. I need someone who is bigger, who is stronger, who is wiser and kind, who provides a safe haven for me. So they need a secure base, a confident base from where they can take off to explore, and they need a very, very safe haven where they can come back to. So this, as they grow, this continues. The only difference would be the type of exploration that they do. So we see that in everyone's life this happens. If we analyze discussing how this is relevant to all relationships later on, and how it is even relevant to our Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Next. So, what does it mean? Children need freedom and confidence to go out and explore the world. And what do they need you to do? Support their exploration, to watch over them, to delight in them, to help them and enjoy with them. Then they need to come back when they need comfort and protection. They need you to welcome them and to help them to organize and regulate the mixed feelings that they are going through. So we need to be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind, and encourage them and follow them, or take charge and comfort them according to the need. So the emotional connect. What is the emotional connect? We need to tune into our child's needs. If they are speaking on some frequency and we are tuning into some other frequency, we will not hear what they need to say, what they want to say. So connect with them. Connect and try to understand what they are trying to say. So many times I am a counselor, and many times clients come to me and ask, what can I do about my child's behavior? How can I stop him from behaving like this? Is there something wrong with him? So
these are not exactly the appropriate questions that we need to ask. Why? So once my spiritual master was giving an example that on a plane, he was traveling on a plane and a child was crying very loudly. And obviously, when people are traveling on a long journey, somebody was reading something, somebody was seeing something, somebody was sleeping, somebody was talking to the partner. So many people were doing so many things. And since the plane is very quiet, very silent, so even slight noise, it sounds very loud. But this child was already very loud. So it was disturbing everyone. So everyone was turning and or looking ahead at the child and wondering, that my God, why is this child disturbing us so much? Why aren't the parents doing anything? So either they were mumbling to each other or they were, looking at each other with irritation. And meanwhile, the mother was frantically trying to pacify the child, make the child quiet. When the plane takes off, many children experience pain in the ears or in the stomach, or they feel nausea and they become uneasy and they cry. So everybody on the plane was thinking, why is this child troubling all of us and disturbing us? But what was the mother thinking? The mother was thinking, why is my child crying? What is disturbing my child? So the mother was thinking about the child, not about the disturbance. Next. So, next. So when a child cries, sometimes we feel that it's just attention seeking. But their need for attention is their need for connection. They want to communicate something, they want to connect to you. So, what is the question that I would ask? What is disturbing my child? What do I need to do? How can I connect and help my child? So, a child's behavior indicates their need for communication and connection. So, when when they are crying or when they are shouting, what do they need? They need our presence. They need our unconditional love. Now, this applies to all relationships. It's not only about child and parents. Family members each need, family members each need protection, comfort, and acceptance. A child needs protection, encouragement, comfort, and acceptance, right? We already spoke about that. They need to explore, they need to learn. At the same time, they need to come back to the shelter of the parents. So they need protection, comfort, and acceptance. Why? They need to know that they matter to you. That is when they feel secure. That whoever this person is values me, cares for me. So, whatever age they may be, they will always feel like this. So, whether it is my husband or it is my wife, whether they are my parents, they are my children, or they are my friends or people I am connected with, people need that feeling of connection. They need to be connected and they need to communicate, whatever age they may be. Again, I said that this applies even in bhakti. How does this apply in bhakti? So, can we go back again to circle of security? Yeah. So, if you see again the circle of security, what is the child doing? The child is going, exploring, and coming back, knowing that my parent is there for me. What is the jiva doing? The jiva is also exploring to find whether I can get happiness in this material world. So, even though the jiva is leaving Krishna, leaving the spiritual world and coming to the material world, but whenever the jiva wants to take shelter of Krishna, wants to take shelter of the holy name, the Lord provides that shelter. The Lord does not judge. The Lord gives unconditional love. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, if we see, after Krishna explains all the different stages of growth in bhakti, in yoga, in jnana, after everything, he tells Arjuna that I have told you everything. Now, Arjuna, you may do as you please. He does not judge Arjuna based on whether Arjuna does what he wants. So, this is the perfect relationship where you give independence, at the same time, you are protecting, you are comforting, you are providing for those who want that connect with you. And Krishna is even providing for those who don't even accept his presence, who don't even want that connect with him. So, adolescents are children. We all know who are adolescents, teenagers. Basically, we can say in today's generation, we can say almost 11 onwards. Earlier it was 13, but now we can say 11 onwards, they are adolescents. So, when things are changing, we change with them. So, adolescents tend to be anxious, awkward, alone, afraid, aware. And parents who have teenage children might agree that it is definitely quite difficult dealing with them. And sometimes we feel lost and confused. But we have to understand that they need us. Our main problem comes in communication. So here main thing that we need to know is that we need to hear, we need to connect, we need to connect to them. So I want to show you one video about listening, which is not only helpful for dealing with children, but for any relationship. This thing is useful. So children at this age generally are passing through a transition in their life. Lot of things are changing. Their body is changing. There are hormonal changes going on. Boys, they start sporting a mustache. Girls have other developmental changes occurring in their bodies. And because of this, because of hormones, there are a lot of changes. So the main thing is that they may behave very differently, but they still need us, and they have a very strong need to be heard. So we'll see this video now.
कर दिया मैंने स्टार्ट। अच्छा, कहाँ से शुरू करूँ? शुरू से शुरू करती हूँ। एक तो ना मैं इन ऑटो वालों को कन्विंस कर करके ना थक गई हूँ। भैया यहाँ चलो वहाँ चलो, मुझे छोड़ के बाकी सबको ले जाते हैं और फिर बोलते हैं हमें महाड़ा नहीं जाना। क्यों? मतलब अब तुम लोगों को जहाँ जाना है मैं वहाँ जाऊँ। यार यहाँ का खाना इतना मीठा क्यों है? सब्जी मीठी, दाल मीठी। अगर खाना इतना मीठा होगा तो मिठाई का कौन सोचेगा? मेरा बाप? बेहतर, बस कुछ पता नहीं चलता कब ठंड कब गर्मी। मेरा तो घर से बाहर निकलने का मन नहीं करता। तो घर पे बैठ के करूँगी क्या? कुछ सुनने वाले इरादा है ना, माउंट मेरी जाने का बहुत मन है, लेकिन ऑफिस वाले से छुट्टी मिले, संडे को भी ऑफिस बुला लेते हैं। मैडम बस 2 घंटे के लिए ऑफिस आ जाओ। नहीं आना मुझे ऑफिस, क्यों आऊँ मैं ऑफिस? संडे है ना। बट नहीं, कुछ बोल नहीं सकती। नहीं नहीं, जॉब से निकाल देंगे। टाइम्स अप। थैंक यू। बाय। थैंक यू।
So most problems in relationships come because we hear what we want to hear. Yeah. We don't hear what the people who are talking are speaking. We hear what we want to hear, and we start shooting advice even before they stop talking. But actually, just listening to a person can serve as a therapy. Listening without judging, listening without fault finding or without giving advice, just listening. So it is very, very essential for relationships to make eye contact when somebody is talking. Otherwise, the parents are busy with their phones, the children are busy with their phones. How will there be proper connection? How will there be communication? How will there be proper relationship? So if there isn't proper communication, if there isn't connection, how will there be good relationships? If we don't spend time, if we don't listen, if we don't show that, I care about you, how will things improve? Somebody is saying no voice, you can't hear.
We can hear Mataji. It's audible.
Okay, so somebody is saying no voice, so maybe there's some problem. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you about when I read this, I actually cried when I read this for the first time. So it is also written by a psychologist, and I'll just read it to you. Not, I haven't taken the entire letter, but I have taken parts of it which are relevant. So a psychologist named Gretchen Smelzer, again from the same Circle of Security organization, he has written a letter, and the title of this letter, what this letter is titled is "A Letter That a Teenager Can't Write." Means this is fiction. This is not a real letter. He has written a letter which, if allowed, which, if acceptable, would have been written by a teenager to his or her parents. And this many a times can be also accepted in relationships. So, what is the teenager saying to the parents? We all know that sometimes children argue, sometimes they fight with the parents, especially in adolescence. They become sometimes very, very unreasonable. Sometimes they become very harsh, very rude with their parents, with their authority figures. So this letter says, I need to fight with you, even though I hate it too. It doesn't matter what I fight about. It could be anything about laundry, homework, messy rooms, choice of clothes, etc. etc. But I need to fight with you and I need you to fight back. I know that you long for the sweeter kid that I was. I long for that kid too. I need this fight and I need to see that no matter how bad or big my feelings are, they won't destroy you or me. I need you to love me even at my worst, even when it looks like I don't love you. I need you to love yourself and me for both of us right now because I can't do it. It, if need be, maybe you can join some group, a group called How to Survive Your Teenager. Hmm? How to Survive Your Teenager Support Group. Do whatever you want, take help from others, but please tolerate me. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on this fight because this fight is very important for me. Why? This fight will teach me that my shadow is not bigger than my light, that bad feelings don't mean the end of a relationship. It teaches me how to listen to oneself even when I might be disappointing others. Like any storm, this fight will end, but it will happen again. And it will happen for many years. I know there is nothing inherently satisfying in this job for you. Parenting is not a very easy job, right? So I know there's nothing satisfying in this job for you. I may never thank you or acknowledge your contribution. More likely, I will criticize you for all this hard work Nothing you do will seem enough. Yet, please stay in this fight. No matter how much I argue or sulk, and know that you are doing the most important job that anyone could possibly be doing for me right now. So, what is this child saying? This child is telling us that I know I am difficult right now, but please don't leave me. Please love me. Be there for me. So, what is the job description of a parent? When we decided to become parents, what was our vision? When we take up any relationship, we have a vision. We have a vision of perfection, that it's going to be so perfect. All happiness and love and playing together and enjoying the child. Even in marriage, we think like that. But no relationship is perfect. It is all a question of how much we invest in it, how much we are willing to be tolerant, how much we are willing to be patient, how much we are willing to extend ourselves. That is what makes it work and that is what makes it continue. So, as parents, our job description was loving the kid, kissing the kid, hearing the child gurgle, playing with the kid. But did we ever envision that at some stage in our life, it may actually come across that our kid hates us? And at some point, even we may feel, I hate this child. Why did I even give birth to this child? That thought may come, and it does come to parents, right? So here, this child is telling us that there is necessity of a parent enduring a child's hatred. It's not something that we signed up for when we took up this job, but it comes. It's a package deal. It comes with any relationship, that we have to endure hatred too sometimes. And we see some stories in the scriptures. We see that how Yashoda Mai loved Krishna unconditionally. It's not that she didn't correct the child, she corrected the child. It's not that Sachi Mata did not correct Lord Chaitanya when he was small. If all of you know, there's one story in Gaur Lila where Nimai, he asked Sachi Mata to arrange a garland for him. He said, I'm going for a bath, and Ma, you keep a garland for me. So, there is no picture being shared, somebody is asking. It is just the slide. So she said, yeah, it will take some time. Just give me some time. I will keep it ready. So when Nimai heard it will take some time, he got very angry and he broke the earthen pots which were there. And after breaking all the pots, he cooled down. And then his mother said that you have broken these pots. Now, in what will I cook for you? So, but she accepted him. She did not reject him. So we don't reject. We don't reject people or we don't reject relationships because of some things that have gone wrong, because that is part of a relationship. Tolerance and being accommodating. So they need us. So we want that our children should be emotionally regulated when they are small and when they grow up. So this emotional regulation depends on different factors. Biology, that is genetics, they get their genes from so many generations. Then their personality, what is their temperament? Main thing is the parenting style. Main thing is the parenting style. There is actually research done which shows that there is a correlation between empathy and aggression. Empathy from the parent and aggression from the child. So when parents show empathy, what is empathy? Empathy means understanding what somebody is going through, putting yourself in their shoes and trying to understand what is my child feeling. Like that mother on the plane was thinking that what must be troubling my child? Why is my child crying? So rather than blaming the child, she was trying to think, how can I help? How can I understand my child better and help? How can I mirror their feelings? So, when parents show empathy to the children, then it has been seen that the levels of aggression are much lower. But when parents are intolerant or irritable or angry. When children express their needs, when they express their emotions, their feelings, then it has been found that there is heightened, that is a greater level of aggression in the children. So parenting plays a very, very important part in the emotional regulation of children. Last time Urmila Mataji uh, gave a class on the same forum. I remember many years back, I had personally asked Urmila Mataji this question. At that time, my first daughter was just entering teenage. She's sitting here right now next to me, helping me with this slideshow. So I still remember we would go for yatras. I would sit in the front, she would sit at the back. If I would sit at the back, she would sit somewhere else. And I used to tell her, please come and sit with me. She was a very attached child. She would never leave me. And I was thinking, what's going wrong? Why is she not sitting with me anymore? She was so emotional and sensitive about the whole thing. So once I asked Urmila Mataji, I said, Mataji, I get very disturbed that where am I going wrong? My child doesn't want to sit with me. So then she explained to me. She said, teenage is a time when where children want to be independent. They want to become assertive. They want to be different. They want to explore. Let them be. Should I tolerate? She said, no. You don't have to tolerate. You should celebrate that your child is growing, that your child is developing her own faculties of thinking. She will think for herself from now on, and that's okay. And when she grows, then both of you will connect again, now on a different level. As Chanakya Pandit says, that from 0 to 5, that is the age where you pamper the child, you love the child. That is the circle of security that you are providing, so that the child feels very secure. And it is shown that a child who gets that love and security, especially up to the age of 7, 8, they become very stable when they grow up. But in adolescence, even those children might behave differently sometimes, because adolescence is like that. Then after that, the next stage Chanakya says is you train your child. That is 6 onwards, say maybe 6 to 11 or 6 to 12, where you become strict. Strict as in not punishing the child, not depriving the child of needs, but training them to follow schedules, training them to focus on what they are doing, get up in the morning, do yoga, learn shlokas, do exercise regularly, do your studies regularly, whatever they need to think, to do pranayam, and do so many other things. When they are very young, we allow them to play, to be close to nature so that they can become stable. They are stable when they are in touch with the prana shakti of the earth, of the air, of the sunlight. And then they are learning. 6 to 10 is their age of learning, of growing. And the more they strive, the more they grow. I remember once Govind Prabhu mentioning that if you plant a tree, one a tree has easy access to water, one plant has easy access to water, and one plant doesn't have easy access. The water is a little far off. Which plant will grow better? So somebody said one which gets water immediately. He said no. The plant which has to strive to get water will grow better. Why? Because in searching for the water, the roots will go deep. So children who have to work a little harder, who have to think for themselves, who have to struggle sometimes, not for basic needs, not for food and shelter, but for other things. They have to work a little hard. They grow. They grow and they become strong because they become more resilient. They learn to deal with difficult situations in their life. So, this is the second stage. And the third stage is where you become their friend. That is teenage. You become their friend. So, I want to show you a video now which shows this. It will take 2 minutes. Till that time, I will explain this point. So, what is the meaning of becoming friend? It means now understanding, as Urmila Mataji said, that now my relationship is changing. Now I no longer dictate. When the child is very small, we tell them what to do. When the child grows up a little, we hear what they want, we understand their needs, but the final say is ours. But when they become teenagers, then we listen to them. We understand from them what they need, and even if we don't agree, we don't order, we negotiate with them because we realize that now they are thinking for themselves. They are growing up now. And to the extent we put our confidence in them, they will be confident. They will have proper self esteem. If we criticize them, if we reject them, if we are constantly demeaning them, they will have very low self esteem and they will lose faith in themselves, us, and others. Therefore, this making this transition is very, very important. So, on top of the slide, I had written that when things change, we change, we change together. So, if our children are changing, wouldn't it be necessary that we change according to the time, place, and circumstances? Yes. So we are also willing to make that change in ourselves according to their emotional needs. If we make a mistake, we say sorry to our children. This is irrespective of whether they are small or they are grown up. We say sorry to them. Why? Because when we say sorry to them, they understand how to say sorry. They understand how to be flexible. They understand how to be accommodating. This they will carry forward in other relationships. If they have never seen anyone saying sorry, how will they learn to say sorry? If they have not received that type of expression, if they have not experienced that type of acceptance or shelter, how will they give that type of shelter or acceptance to others? How will they even accept that the Lord will give us shelter? Because they have never experienced it. So even to experience love and shelter from, to even to experience love and shelter from Krishna, we first have to accept it from our parents, because Krishna has put the parents in charge of taking care of the children. So we will see this video. It's a very small clipping from a movie, just a small dialogue. Yes.
बचपन में बच्चा हमारी उंगली पकड़ के चले ताकि भीड़ में खो न जावे, और जिस दिन वो हमारी उंगली छोड़ दे तो ऐसा लगे जैसे हम ही खो गए हों। पर बात भी है भाई साहब, जब तक बालक आपकी उंगली छोड़ेगा नहीं तब तक आके गले कैसे लगावेगा।
So here we see that what is he saying? He's saying that when the child is very small, the child holds our hand and walks. But when the child grows, the child leaves our hand. The child leaves our hand so that it can come and embrace us. What a beautiful dialogue. I really loved this dialogue. So, unless we are willing to leave the hand, we will not get that embrace. So, we need to make that transition from being a parent to being a friend. I had another video which is very beautiful, but it's just too long to show on this forum, wherein a mother, it's a cartoon, it's not real people, wherein a mother, after the baby is born, she refuses to cut the umbilical cord. So just like a dog is on a leash, the child is stuck to her all the time. And what happens because of that? The whole video is about that. So we have to know when to cut the umbilical cord. We have to know that up to a certain point, the child needs us all the time. After some time, that being together and being so close all the time is not healthy for the child. It is not healthy for their growth. And especially after they get married, then we become irrelevant in their lives. Yes, we can inspire them. We can give them advice when they ask for it. Otherwise, we can just go about minding our own business if we really want them to have healthy and stable relationships. So we were talking about emotional regulation, also the point on culture. In some cultures, it is acceptable that children can express their emotions, like in the Western world. But in some cultures, like in the Eastern cultures and also in India till recent, it was not acceptable that a child would express their feelings. If some people would be considered to be weak if they express their feelings, and in some cultures it was considered that how can you speak like this? You should just tolerate. Also, this was sometimes a gender stereotype. Sometimes men are considered to be weak if they express their emotions, and women are told that you should not express your emotions, you should just tolerate. But when people are put into such situations where they cannot express their emotions, where they are not heard, where they are not supported, comforted when they need it, then what happens? Those relationships sour. Those relationships become unstable. They become unhealthy. And if there is no stability, then there cannot be loyalty. This is something that Govind Prabhu always mentioned, and I feel it's so logical. How can there be loyalty if there is no stability? Next. Yeah. So this is a grid on what is called parenting styles. So if you look at this, so it is about two variables. So on one side you have warmth and sensitivity that a parent, that a caregiver gives to the child, the love and support. And on the top is expectations and control or rules that a parent imposes on the child. So one side is what the parent gives, and on the other side, what the parent expects from the child. So if you see the first quadrant, which is on the upper left, it says authoritative. So, okay, did everyone hear what I said earlier, or should I repeat? Should I repeat?
We could
Oh.
hear Mataji, only the volume was low. Now it's fine.
Okay, okay. So I'll just repeat this part, that the first quadrant, which is on the upper left, it says, it shows what? It shows high expectations and high sensitivity. So here, the parent respects the child's opinions, but yet maintains boundaries or rules. The parent is firm but flexible. Firm about principles but flexible about the details, willing to listen and understand the child. This parent has faith in the child but yet draws boundaries for the child. So, next is permissive. That is the quadrant which is on the upper right. Permissive, where they are low on expectation and control, but they are high on warmth and sensitivity. Where you are giving so much love and so much pampering, but no rules, indulgent without discipline. Next is the third quadrant, which is the one which is down on the right hand side. Neglectful, where you are low on both warmth and on expectations. That means neither you are setting boundaries, expectations, no control, no rules, and you are not even giving any affection. You are not giving the warmth and sensitivity that your child needs. That means you are emotionally uninvolved and you are not setting rules. Detached, complete detached. The last one is authoritarian. Authoritarian means you are low on warmth and sensitivity and you are neglectful. That is you are low on warmth and sensitivity, and you are high on expectation and control. That means you are very, very strict, but you are not giving affection. So what happens? So what happens when this type of parenting is done? So in the first one, that is the authoritative, parents who are authoritative, their children grow up to be very confident and very disciplined and flexible. because they have experienced flexibility, so they are also able to practice that flexibility. When parents are authoritarian, that is, they are very extremely strict without giving the necessary warmth and sensitivity, then what happens is those children, they generally have emotional problems and conduct problems, because they haven't received emotional they haven't received affection. They become hard hearted. Generally, this type of parenting, it results in children who have problems dealing with social norms. They develop conduct disorders, and they can even be antisocial in their behavior. Generally, criminals, they are from such backgrounds. Children who have been rejected by the parents. Yeah, I will give example of each. Yeah. So they have been rejected by their parents. Okay. Maybe they have been thrown somewhere. They've been put in an orphanage, and Aya just comes and sticks a bottle of milk into their mouth and goes. There isn't that loving touch, there isn't that affection that is given. So there is some part of their brain that does not develop, and that is the part which shows empathy. So they cannot understand other people's emotions and needs. Then it is only about me, I, me, and myself. So therefore, it is very important. This warmth and sensitivity towards children and in any relationship is a very, very important aspect. So authoritative, somebody said give examples. Authoritative means firm and flexible. I don't know what example to give for this, but you can say, yeah. For example, a parent might say that you need to do your homework for 1 hour, and that needs to be done, and the child wants to play. So you negotiate with them and you decide, and you come to a plan that, okay, you will play, but you will play after you do your homework. Then if the child says, but my friends come at this time, okay, then you will play today and you will do your homework after that. But today, if you are not sticking to that rule of doing in your homework on time, then the consequence will be tomorrow again that rule will change and you will have to do your homework first. So setting rules for the children, but also helping them to conform to the rules by accepting and accommodating their needs too. Then permissive, indulgent without discipline. Very clear. The example is, it results in spoilt brats who only expect later on in their life also that everybody will do what they want, when they want, how they want, as much as they want. And if people don't do it for them, they think those people need punishment, or there's something wrong with them, because there has never been discipline in their life. It will be all about enjoying, getting what I want. So, since they are low on discipline and since they are low on self control, it becomes difficult for them to progress, and also it becomes difficult for people who live with them. Yeah, somebody asked a question. Adhika, the chats. Somebody asked a question. Can you ask the question? Show the question again. 1 minute. Huh? Yes, yes. So if we are not engaging in the right type of parenting, right style of parenting, then what happens? It affects our obviously it affects our parenting habits also, because as I mentioned earlier, what we have not experienced, how can we give that to others? If we have not experienced love, how can we give that to others? Some people may be exceptions who might really work on themselves to overcome. That is, if they have come in contact with somebody, some mentor, or some other relationship where they have received that love, then maybe it can be altered. I remember my mother telling me that my father, he lost his mother at a very young age. Very young age. He was only 4 years, 3 or 4 years old when he lost his mother. So he did not receive that affection. Father was busy with his work, and there were many children. There were 4 or 5 of them. So he never received that affection which a child at that age should get. Yes, his son. Sister did give him some love, but otherwise he didn't. So my mother said that when we got married, I made up for that. He never knew what a birthday was, what is affection. He was not, but she gave him so much affection that his way of thinking changed. He was always a wonderful person and he became even better. So sometimes if they meet people, yes, about I'll share the tips after this. So we go back to the point that what we have not got, we cannot give. So as parents, we can be careful that what we want the child to have, we have to make sure we are giving them that. We cannot expect them to do something that we are not doing. That's not possible. Children imitate the parents. They're like little monkeys. So the best way to kill a value is to teach it. If we live a life of values, our children will learn those values even without being told. They may not do it now, but later on, they will use those values in their lives. So, therefore, this is a very, very important point. Yeah. So, somebody is asking, how do we go from authoritarian to authoritative? If somebody is of a particular personality or nature, it is not very easy to change your own nature. So, generally, this change will happen only if an authoritarian person feels at some point that my relationship with my child is getting completely spoiled. And if I value this relationship, then whether it is wife, it is child, it is husband, it is parents, whatever, that personality thinks that my rigidity, my lack of flexibility, and my uh, lack of sensitivity is affecting this relationship. And this relationship means a lot to me. Yes, I know I have a particular way of behavior. I have a particular way of thinking. And I always feel that I am right. And I was just sharing with some devotees few days ago that there is one serial which my children used to see. It's about a lawyer, it's about a court scene. And he always used to win every case. And at the end of the case, he would ask, am I right or am I right? So, do we ask this question in our relationships? Am I right or am I right? That means we are not giving any room for discussion. I am always right. But then what happens? The relationship suffers. So, when we become conscious that my relationship is suffering because of this, and I value this relationship. So, even if it is difficult, even if it might be really causing me a lot of discomfort, I will make an effort to make this change. Why? Because it is worth it. It is worth it. How to make the transition? That is a big lecture by itself. The first step is awareness that I need to make a change. I want to make a change. Right? When we go to, supposing you are going to a foreign country, like we went to the US recently, we had to do so much work. We had to find out so many things, get in touch with so many people, get letters from people who are abroad, get our visas approved, get our passport made, and so much work was involved in that, right? And that was a short trip. 15-20 days we went and we came back. For a short trip of 15 days, I tell you, at least 2 months we were running from here to there to get things done, to find out everything about where we are going to go, how we are going to stay, where we are going to stay, what are the rules over there, what things we can buy from there, how much money. So much information we got before we left. How much do we try to study about relationships before we enter them? Do we really try to find out about parenting before we become parents? We need to. Radha Gopinath Prabhu always gives this example. He gives this example that if somebody enters into a first class compartment of a local train in Mumbai with a second class ticket, and the TC comes and catches him and says, now you'll have to pay a fine. And that person says, I didn't know. So the TC will say, okay, you didn't know, but it is your business to know. When you are entering a train, you should know what are the rules. and now you will never forget. So he will charge you the fine. So sometimes when we make mistakes, we have to pay for those mistakes. But the good news is it is not irreversible. It can be changed. Yes, it can be changed, but we should want it. We should have the motivation to change, and we should know why we want to change. If we want to make a change in any relationship or change ourselves for improving the relationship, it means some need of ours is being fulfilled in that relationship. Otherwise, we won't make that effort. So, whenever we are putting in effort, it means some need of ours is being fulfilled, and therefore, we are willing to tolerate a little discomfort in order to improve that relationship. So, here it is not only a matter of how we feel or our children feel, but understanding, as somebody asked the question, that when if we go wrong in our parenting, it will not only affect our relationship with the child, but it will change, it will affect the child's emotional state, and also it will affect their parenting behaviors. As I said in the beginning, that we create a legacy and we hand over that legacy to the next generation. So if we are behaving in a particular way with our children, it's but obvious that most of the time, there are exceptions, most of the time, they may tend to behave in the same way with their children. So then it forms a vicious cycle. So, anyway, the good news here is that even though we may make mistakes, when we make mistakes, we realize that we are wrong. And then we decide that next time I will not do this with my kids or with whoever in any relationship. And again, we end up making similar mistakes. So sometimes we may be successful in carrying out the resolutions that we have made for improving our relationships with our kids. Sometimes we may not be. But the good news is that good enough is good enough. If we are trying our best, even if sometimes we are failing, it's okay, because we are not perfect, nor are our kids perfect. Our kids don't expect us to be perfect. They just need us to connect. They need us to communicate and receive communication from them. We might be making some mistakes here and there, but even if we are right, there's some statistics which say even if we are connecting and communicating even 30 to 40% of the time, still we can move ahead in our relationship. So connect, communicate, and yes, there are so many, yeah, there's so much information available about parenting that you can get. So read books, you can read from the internet, you can attend workshops, you can do so many things to improve ourselves. So we have to upgrade ourselves. Just as somebody who is working in a bank or in a company, sometimes they read a lot, they give exams to upgrade themselves so that they get a promotion. So we can also upgrade ourselves as parents, but just as we are flexible and accommodating and forgiving with our children, we can be flexible, accommodating, and forgiving with ourselves too, accepting ourselves where we are, but understanding where we have to go. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any other question? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have time. I think we can take one more question. Rajvallabhi Mataji?
Yes, sure, Mataji. You can take some
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. So, somebody asked, is it possible to mend an already broken relationship, especially when one feels that the person is always right and blames the other person for spoiling the relationship? I think I already spoke on this. So, it is possible to mend relationships if both the parties want to. Any relationship, if both the parties want, then only the relationship can be healed. Yeah, I want to mention one more point over here, that in a relationship, the most important aspect after connection and communication is repair, which most people don't do. We have maybe an expectation or belief that a relationship should be perfect, that people should be perfect in their behavior, but it doesn't always happen. As we ourselves have experienced, it doesn't happen, even though we expect it. Then what do we do? What do we do when things go wrong? We repair it. If we have made a mistake, we beg forgiveness, we rectify the mistake. If they have made a mistake, they rectify their mistake and life goes on. There has been research done that it is not necessary that the most successful marriages are those in which there were no fights. Of course, there were fights, there will be fights. If you have different personalities, you come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different upbringing, how can you be thinking the same every time? You would have different opinions. But to have the understanding that two people could have different opinions and both could be right, when we understand this, then we make progress. There is a heart surgeon called Dr. Bimal Chajed, and in one of his books, he has mentioned that in the Jain philosophy, there is a principle of anekant. Anekant means that more than one. What does that mean? Generally, if I'm having an argument with someone, I say, I am right. And that means that person must be wrong. But does it need to be like that? In the story of the six blind men and the elephant, which I presume all of us have heard in our childhood. So these six blind men are touching the elephant, and each one is having a different experience. One says this, one touches the tail, he says that this elephant is a rope. One touches the elephant's ears and says this object is a fan. One touches the leg and says this is a trunk of a tree. One touches the trunk and says this is a wall. So everyone speaks according to their experience. But who is right and who is wrong? Both can be right. Problems come in relationships when we want to be the only right person. My mother used to always tell me this story that a husband and wife had a fight. The wife was saying that scissor is sharper than knife. They had to cut something. He said, no, get the knife. She said, scissor is sharper. He said, no, knife. Argument, argument, argument. He got so angry. He said, I'll throw you into the well. Accept that what I'm saying. She said, no, scissor is right. He threw her into the well. After she fell into the well, he gave her another chance. He said, okay, at least now you accept that the knife is sharper than the scissor. She drowned putting her finger up like this. That means I will die, but scissor is sharper. So, what is more important? Being alive? What is more important? The relationship or proving that we are always right? So, when we become conscious, when both the people become conscious, if it is only one partner, if it is us, then we can work on ourselves. We cannot force the other person to change themselves. That is something which is beyond our control. So, whatever is within our control, we can work from our side, and maybe we can try to explain to the other person or pray or try to think positive about the person, think positive improvement. Okay, next question is that between 7 to 11, when you say we have to set rules, can we be authoritarian and then try to move to authoritative from 12? Does that work? Yeah, you said thank you already. That means you got the answer, I think. So between 7 to 11, when we set rules, we are still not authoritarian. Authoritarian means when we are not giving affection. It doesn't mean just setting rules, right? Is discussion or argument good with kids? I believe explaining them and improving their logical thinking, but sometimes it's tiresome. Yes, it is very essential, especially for teenagers. Because teenagers, they are at an age where they are thinking now. They are thinking logically. They are very much into the justice mode. This is right and this is wrong. If you observe, whenever there are any morchas, right, morchas anywhere, who leads the morcha? Elderly people with sticks? No, the youth, because they have that fire in their body. The pitta is more. One of our Ayurvedic doctors, Nirmal Chandra Prabhu, he had explained once in a parenting seminar that children have more, teenagers have pith in their body. That means pith means fire. So when they are angry, if you also put anger, that means you are putting fire. So what do you need to put? What does a fire extinguisher have? Either it has earth or it has water to extinguish the fire. So they need love and support, right? But they also need fuel for their fire. So what is fuel? When you have discussions with them, it fuels their thought process. So debating, discussing with them is very, very important, and it helps them to grow. It helps them to develop confidence. It also helps them to understand how we can respect each other's views. Even though we may not agree with each other, they learn how to agree to disagree. Okay, I think this is the last question before we stop. How to maintain how what is best solution for child with bad behavior when they're below 5? I don't think I can take that now because it's a long topic. I think for, yeah, for children below 5, it's just love. It's just love that we have to give them, an affection. They need love and affection, and we can correct them by being firm with them. Like, for example, if a child is hitting someone, we don't yell at the child, we don't punish the child, but we can definitely hold their hand and say, no, it hurts. We can give them the knowledge. Pamper, being very loving doesn't mean not correcting them. We can correct them, but we give in to their needs. Prabhupada asked once for 2 guns and his parents gave, bought it for him. So, lot of love. At the same time, setting good example. If children are exhibiting bad behavior, as in yelling and beating, are they seeing something in the environment, either on TV, mobile, or in their own family? If they are seeing some type of behavior, there is a chance that there's a good chance that they will exhibit those type of behaviors. How to maintain good relationship? If you meet them only in the weekend, if you stay away due to the job, same principles you apply, but you apply them on the weekend, and you can keep in touch with them by writing them letters, by maybe leaving small notes for them, where they could find those notes. One of our devotees, I know that she sometimes in her husband's tiffin she sends small notes for him. So he feels very happy when he opens the tiffin and he sees it. So you can, according to their age, you can deal with them. And nowadays, I am talking to you even though I am not with you. So, because technology has advanced, there are ways and means of keeping in touch. Some good books to read. There is a very good book, How to Talk So Kids Would Listen and How to Listen So Kids Would Talk. There are other books on parenting which maybe I can put on the group or on the chat later on. And sometimes kids love asking questions of which they already know. They know answers to irritate parents. Yeah, sometimes they know. They want to see how you respond or react. Like I told in that letter, they want to know how you are reacting or responding. And it also depends on what question. If a child looks at a dog and asks, what is that? Now they know it's a dog. Even you know it's a dog. But you can go one step ahead, right? You can say that's a police dog. Then they'll ask, what does a police dog do? Then that starts a conversation. So sometimes when a child is asking you a question for which the answer seems to be very obvious, they are trying to connect to you. They are giving you a cue that they want to know more, or they just want to have a conversation with you. Okay, for working mothers, it's not always possible to communicate with children. Will it affect a child's behavior? No. Whatever time you are communicating, that much communication is enough for them to understand that my mother cares for me. They understand that my mother needs to work, but when you are there with them, how do you deal with them? That is what would strengthen or weaken your connection with your child. And communicating with them for the right reasons, and not just pampering them out of a sense of guilt that I'm not with them, so I should give them toys. And no, no. Children are very strong. They adjust to the situations, but they will become responsible in their behavior. Yeah. How to join the group? 1 minute. Okay, that is something else. For children below 5, though we know it's not good to give him a beating, sometimes it happens. How to not do it? How to not do it? When we know that something is important to do, we do it. When we know something is harmful, we don't do it. So we have to talk to ourselves. We have to tell ourselves. We have to visualize that next time when the child behaves badly, what do I do? You close your eyes, you visualize that you went to beat the child, and you pause your video at that point. You pause your video, and now you write a new script. You're not beating the child, you're just holding the child and explaining to the child. Understand, at that age, the child doesn't understand. It's like dealing with a dementia patient. Small children and very elderly people are on the same level. You have to be compassionate, loving, and supportive. Yeah. How to make children spiritual? That is another lecture. Maybe we can have another time. I think Urmila Mataji spoke at great length. So maybe on this group itself, you can access that lecture and find out. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We thank her Grace Radharani Mataji for sparing her valuable time from her very busy schedule and teaching us all how we can emotionally connect with our dear ones in a much better way. Thank you, Mataji. It was a wonderful session, and we would like all the participants to know that Mataji is conducting professional sessions and you can join her. Mataji, if you can share your details, your Facebook page, and on the chat box, if Radhika can share, so everyone will get benefited.
So somebody was asking about the group. How do people connect to the group? If people want information, how do we communicate to them?
Yeah,
Or
for the practical spirituality group, we have sent details, and for connecting to with you, Mataji, you can send ask Radhika to send in the details.
yeah, so I will send the details to you. I am not very, yeah,
Okay,
right
so I
now.
will rotate it in the
Yeah,
WhatsApp group.
so I will send it to you. I am not very techno savvy. My daughter will send it to you, and then you can forward it on the group. Yeah, but I'll just share that I do conduct workshops on emotional regulation. It is not child specific, but it is for any relationship. And we do discuss about children also. And I also conduct workshops on parenting. So if somebody is interested, they can get in touch with me. And I will send my email ID and my details so that people who want to get in touch on a personal level can contact me. As far as the parenting and the spiritual aspect is concerned, Urmila Mataji has already spoken in detail, so you can hear the class again. She's a wonderful devotee, and I have learned a lot from her. I have learned a lot from all the devotees in our congregation. I'm comparatively junior as compared to so many senior devotees, and I'm very, very grateful to all of them.